Good afternoon on this 21st day of December 2018, just about 10 days to the end of the year, and it is such an opportunity that we are waiting for the release of the KCSE 2018 results. We understand that in a short while the Cabinet Secretary will be doing so. My name is Sam Gituku, joining you for this special coverage of what exactly the students, 664,000 of them, were doing in school as they wrote the examinations a few days ago. I'll be joined by one of the panelists who is joining us, that is Dr. Andrew Riechi, who is the senior lecturer at the Department of Education, Administration and Planning at the University of Nairobi. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
Right, and just before we do that, just to remind you that, as I said, that we'll be taking you live to the Kenya National Examinations Council offices, that is Mitihani houses, and we have Raquel Muigai, who is there to tell us what's the latest in terms of the preparations for the release of this year's KCSE results. Raquel, good afternoon. What can you tell us from your side?
Good afternoon to you, Gituku. A very warm evening here, morning here from the Kenya National Examination Council headquarters. So far, so good. A lot of people have come here, especially that being the county education officials, as well as those from the NAT, the Kenya National Union of Teachers, under the leadership of Wilson Sosion. They're all already here. But we do expect that CS for Education Ambassador Amina Mohammed will be able to come here in the next few minutes just to get to release the 2018 KCSE results that have been marked within less than a month, given that the marking of this examination began in December 3rd. Now, we'll get to have at least, it will be a tense moment definitely for those that start for the examinations this year, as they get to have, get to have the results this day. But until this point, that is the much that we can say. Hopefully to see what the CS will be able to mention, especially when it comes to matters irregularities. There were a lot of that reported during that particular period. And we also do have the case from Mbeere Boys, which we'll also be looking at, and just to look at how exactly they've been able to deal with that, and if at all there are any examinations that will be withheld or results that will be withheld for certain schools. Because if you can remember, just last year 10 schools got their examinations withheld and they did not get to receive the examination. So until that point, we'll be able to look at, these are some of the things that we'll be able to look at as we get to just wait for the CS to get here. Gituku.
Right, Raquel, this is sort of the first time, I think, since March 2016 that we're having the examination results released from the Kenya National Examinations Council headquarters. The last time, I believe, was by CS Fred Matiang'i in March 2016, when he sort of, that was the last time, and he indicated that everything else would be done differently. Just asking, because we have been hearing reports that the examination results would be released any day this week, but finally it's Friday and we are just about to do that. What could have been happening that we didn't receive the results earlier?
Take this chance to take it. Asanteni sana.
Sorry, Gituku, if I couldn't get you clearly.
Well, I'm asking, it is the first time since March 2016 that the examination results will be released from the Kenya National Examinations Council, and you have been having reports, hearing reports that the results are ready for release anytime this week, but then now it's Friday. What has been happening? Why didn't we have these results earlier like had been reported? Well, unfortunately, we cannot, Raquel cannot hear me. We'll be trying to get back to her and get to understand on the preparations for the examination results for 2018, that is KCSE. As I had said earlier, we have about 664,000 candidates. Raquel, if you can hear me, the question I'm asking is, why did it take so long? We had been promised that the results would be out as early as Tuesday this week, yet here we are. Anyway, we'll try to get back to Raquel, but obviously those are the live pictures from the Kenya National Examinations Council offices at Mitihani House, Caledonia Estate, and we'll be taking you there as soon as the Cabinet Secretary for Education, Ambassador Amina Mohammed, is there to release the results for the KCSE candidates who start that exam until the 28th of November. And back in studio, I'm with Dr. Andrew Riechi, senior lecturer, as I had said earlier, the Department of Education, Administration and Planning. And I just want to begin from the from the start that first was the KCPE results that were released, I believe, on 19th or 20th of November. Then the administration of KCSE was concluded on 28th. It's now 21st of December, sort of about 23 days to mark, compile, do analysis, and come up with the final results to be released. It is the second time. See, of course, the first time was last year that we saw such kind of speed. What have we realized all of a sudden that we are now so efficient to really conduct this exercise?
Sam, I think I'm excited to see this kind of development happening. It demonstrates the efficiency within, with which the Kenya National Examinations Council is processing the exams. And I think what I know is since this began a few years ago, I think what has happened is the management of the Ministry of Education and NEC have sealed some of the loopholes. And I understand there were procedures very elaborate procedures that used to happen after marking of those scripts that used to give some crafty officials and cartels an opportunity to do what they wanted to do after the marking of the scripts. So I think this is an indicator of efficiency, and I congratulate the Ministry of Education, the chairman of the council, and staff at the NEC.
Right.
Yep.
And looking at what has been happening, there's some graphics that we'll be looking at, some of the statistics that have been announced by the Cabinet Secretary for Education earlier on, that we had been told that during the administration of the KCSE 2018, there were several cases of malpractices that had been reported, and at least 10 teachers had been arrested for those malpractices. Then we had 4 candidates who had registered for impersonation, and about 101 phones had been confiscated. So sort of showing you that despite the efforts that are being made to ensure that the examination administration is secure, there are still some people who are trying to beat the system. I'm just wondering, what should be done to ensure that no candidate gets to suffer out of such kind of situations, of course, cultivated by adults?
It's a difficult question, considering that our education system is exam-oriented, and I can easily describe our education as an examination system. So. It is, it's a process of selecting and placing. That's what exams are doing, in this part of the world, which, of course, should not be the case entirely. It should be, exams should be a form of assessment of what has been going on. Has there been learning? And I have in mind the 15 or so objectives of secondary education, which to a large extent these exam results are not reflecting. So I think it will be very difficult because of the first point I've said, that exams in Kenya, summative exams, those that come at the end of level of education, are a matter of life and death, because they are going to determine placement.
Yes.
And so it is very difficult to really fight the thing until we change from the current exam-oriented, teacher-centered education system to the competence-based curriculum.
Well, that's an interesting conversation that you're bringing. Excuse me, that you're bringing in, talking about the objectives of secondary education.
Yes.
But whatever the case, we have candidates that have been going through this examination system, and today, by the end of today, more than 600,000 candidates who start that exam have known how they have performed, and that will sort of determine their future. So where does the conversation of competence-based curriculum, which is now sort of has been halted, where does that conversation of that versus the actual candidates who are going through this system, where does it settle?
Let me tell you this, Sam. Exam results, we are going to be told about, several A's, several B's, and so on and so forth, or marks. Those marks as I know as an educationist, do not reflect some of the expected outcomes. For example, I would tell you one thing. The 7th objective of Kenya's secondary education reads as follows, that it should promote positive environmental and health practices, right? But wherever we go, people are throwing trash, even on the highways,
yes,
in schools. I mean, so the other one, the 11th one, promote acceptance and respect for all persons. These are some of those objectives, general objectives of secondary education. But our teachers, most of them, I can say with confidence, because we go out as trainers of teachers, we go out to assess our students who are on teaching practice. And I'm curious over the years to find out whether they are aware of these objectives.
Yes.
Many of them don't, but they are aware of the syllabus, the so-called NEC syllabus.
Yes.
These objectives are contained in the KCSE curriculum booklet. But many teachers have no idea, even the color of the syllabus. What they do, they have some notes to teach from, and what NEC exams are going to cover. So at the end of the day, they are only communicating knowledge, and some of the students pick the ideas and prepare to pass exams. When what secondary education or primary education is all about is not implemented.
So why is that missing link? Because you're an educator, you train your students who become teachers, and one would assume that you expose them to such kind of content. What happens?
We do. I think the last time I was in a classroom was 1994, I think, when I was at KTTC after completing my MEd program at Kenyatta University. So I don't know, but what happens when new teachers are posted to schools and the orientation thereof, that goes on. But it is all about our education system, which places a lot of importance on marks.
On the grade.
So whichever way you use to get the grades, that is what matters. And that makes me sad. So we may not blame the teachers. The teachers are under pressure. If you went to schools now, and I'm talking, I'm a chairman of a board of management of a secondary school in my village. When you go to most secondary schools, you'll see signposts, indicating the mean score for the year. All right? There are a few schools that has posters showing some of the things close to the objectives of of education, being considerate, being God-fearing.
Yes.
But what comes out clearly, even in those schools, is the emphasis on what mean score is our target.
The school posted.
So teachers do everything, and even do not teach some of the subjects which are not examinable.
Right.
Like life skills, PE, right? So long as they are not adding value during PE lessons, during lessons for life skills as a subject, teach, revise and let them pass.
Wow, that's an unfortunate truth, but obviously shortly we'll be having the Cabinet Secretary for Education, Ambassador Amina Mohammed, releasing those results in form of grades and marks. So obviously we'll have to pay attention to that, because that's what we're dealing with currently. And Raquel Muigai is on the line now. Raquel, I hope you can hear me now. And then the question I still want to ask you is that we had been told earlier that the results would be out earlier during the week. Now it's Friday. We understand that they're just about to be released. What could have transpired? Why didn't we have them earlier? What's happening?
Gituku, up until this point, we can't be in a position to actually mention why exactly the results were not released earlier. But if we try and look at what happened last year, just a time like this, because the results for 2017 KCSE examinations were released at a time like this, that was December 20th. So probably it was something that might have been... it was information that was just carried out without clear guidelines or a clear date that the exams were supposed to be released. But up until this point, what we can now confirm is that the results are being released today, and we can't be in a state to mention exactly why it wasn't released earlier. But we'll just be looking at all this, what has transpired during the KCSE examination during this period where over 600,000 students sat for their KCSE in 2018, and also trying to compare and see what exactly happened in terms of what will the results look like this year, given that last year we had at least 142 A's as well as 2,714 A minuses. We want to look at what exactly has occurred this year. Will there be an improvement? Will there be a decline in the results that will be released this year? But also to bring into perspective what occurred or what transpired during this year's examination is that we saw a lot of cabinet secretaries who were able to, who could be seen every morning just trying to look and check if the examination regulations are followed to the letter, something that has not been happening over the years. Perhaps the determination of the education ministry to look into it, to break the cartel ring that they describe, makes the country lose a lot of billions of shillings in terms of exam irregularities. So it is something that could not go unnoticed in this year's examinations, even as the Education Ministry set out to ensure that there was no exam cheating at all. But we also had incidents that occurred where a lot of people were arrested in different parts of the country given the cheating that was there, be it especially around earlier when the exams were starting. We did see that at least 31 people were arrested after having been suspected of involvement in the examination irregularities in the country, being a few from Kisii, a few from also Kakamega, from the Western region, and also some from the Coast region. But this is something that we do expect that the CS will be able to mention and to see what exactly happens to those that were arrested, and also those that were suspected to have been involved in exam irregularities. And also another thing that cannot go unmentioned is the fact that we did have a lot of teenage pregnancies, or what we describe as something that has not been the case over the years. And it's something that came out really during the KCPE examination as well as the KCSE examination for this year. Something that we'll be looking out for as the CS gets to release the results this year. But last year we saw a lot of improvement in terms of a minor improvement, really, Gituku, when we talk about how the grades came about in terms of the number of A's that were released. Just in 2016, we saw only 141 A's. In 2017, there were 142 A's. Probably this year it will be an improvement, just getting to also look at that. But when you look at the number of students who got A minuses in 2016, there were a lot of students, almost 6,000 students who managed an A minus. But when it came to 2017, the number reduced by almost a half to 2,700 students only. Will this be the case this year as for 2018 KCSE? It's something that we'll be also looking out for. There's also the issue of ranking of students that was meant to have been taking place since the bill was signed into play by President Uhuru Kenyatta in 2016. But until this point, it occurred that the Education Ministry has not been able to set out rules and regulations to ensure that this gets to happen and in a fair condition. Because if you remember, back in 2014, when the then Education Cabinet Secretary Jacob Kaimenyi was there, he stated that particular ranking presented an unfair competition, put a lot of pressure on students and teachers to an unfair competition and unfair pressure that they didn't expect at that particular point, and therefore it led to a lot of them involving themselves in exam cheating, and therefore it was rubbed off and stated that and the Education Ministry stated that that should not happen. But it's something that the Kenya National Union of Teachers apparently did not agree to, given that they wanted to see that at least at the end of the day there's that fair play, and every student and every school gets to have or gets to know where is it that they stand. But we also do have the issue of capacity, the issue of teacher and student ratio in certain schools, and that was the issue, because this particular cases do not present themselves in terms of ranking or in the min score that is being used to rank these schools. And therefore, when the parliamentarians were debating this bill that was sponsored by MP Chris Wamalwa, they stated that these are some of the issues that have to be included in this particular bill to ensure that at least even as they get to rank schools in terms of their performance, they also get to look at the teacher and number ratio, the teacher to student ratio, get also to look at the availability of resources in that particular school, given that you can't be able to rank a school with over 200 students and a school that also has 26 or 60 students who registered for their national examinations and rank them the same way. And therefore this was some of the issues, but until this point we do expect that probably CS Ambassador Amina Mohammed will be able to mention on that and how far it is that they've got in terms of creating rules or probably regulations or an order perhaps to look into the ranking of schools that will get to see students and teachers, or students as well as the school's heads, get to know where is it exactly that they stand in the country in terms of performance. But until this point, it is something that the students and the school heads will have to depend on the media when it comes to ranking the Getuku.
Right, that's Raquel Mugai speaking to us on phone from the Kenya National Examinations Council headquarters, of course, indicating some of the issues that we'll be expecting the Cabinet Secretary to talk about in as far as the administration of this year's examination is concerned, and also to talk about the matters arising out of the results and what has been observed and why there should be certain changes into how education is being offered in this country. Now we have another guest, that is Amos Kaburu. Welcome back to Citizen TV. The last time we spoke, you were talking about curricular matters, and still a hot issue. Yes. So, of course, Amos Kaburu comes from the Toeza East Africa, and then there is Dr. Andrew Rechi from the Department of Education, Administration and Planning at the University of Nairobi. I just want us to go through some of the statistics that we have in as far as this year's class of, the class of 2018 is concerned. And first of all, we know there are 664,500 candidates who had been registered to sit the examination for this year. And out of that, 222 schools were put under scrutiny, quite surveillance, after reports of plans to manipulate the examination process. Then we know that officials in 10 centers were fired or charged in as far as the irregularities are concerned. 110 people were arrested over cheating. 10 teachers were arrested for malpractices. 4 candidates were deregistered for impersonation. 101 phones were confiscated during the administration of the examination. And beyond that, just to compare to the KCSE of 2017, that is 1 year ago, there were 615,772 candidates who had been registered for that examination. 70,000 of them attained the university entry grade, that is a C+ and above. That's about 11%, meaning 89% did not qualify to join universities. Then for grade A, there were 142. A- was 2,714. B+ was 7,344. B-, or rather B plane was 12,628. For B-, that was 19,385, and C+ scorers were 27,860 candidates. So you can see that below C+, we had about 540,000, that is half a million, or as I said earlier, 89% of the class. And then E graders, persons that scored an E, that is just 1 point, meaning they sort of failed. That was 35,536. And I think I want to start from my question from that point, but before we do so, the grades, we had Karemi Naomi of Pangani Girls. We matched the top candidate with a mean grade of 87 points. The Kenya National Examination Council withheld results for 10 schools pending probe, but eventually there were reports as to those schools are concerned. So let's sort of get to digest the results of 2017 vis-a-vis what we might expect when the KCSE 2018 results are released. So you see a class of 615,000 in 2017. Now we have a class of 664 in 2018. So that's about 50,000 more candidates who are registered. We don't know what is the effective register. I mean, the effective number of candidates that's at the exam. But talking of 89% unable to join university direct entry, what does this say? Even as Dr. Riechi says that we are such an examination-oriented country, we focus on the entry grade, it is still important. So when 89% are not able to join the university directly, there has to be something that is not right.
Thank you, Sam. And just as we were having this conversation, I was quickly checking through the numbers. And the number of candidates who are sitting who sat for 2018, that is a cohort that sat for KCPE in 2014. And that year we had a total of 906,000 students, candidates sitting for KCPE. That means that we have lost 242,000 children from that cohort who never made it to reach Form 4. And probably there's a team that was about 1.1 who entered Class 1. So we're talking about effectively from Standard 1 up to Form 4, we have lost more than 500,000 children. So that tells you the inefficiencies. But to respond to this question adequately would be what Dr. Riechi was putting across when you had started the conversation. And that has got to do with clear interpretation of the aims of education at different levels of education. Early childhood education has got specific learning outcomes that you expect, which contribute towards the aims of education. And then you talk about primary, which is about the foundational skills, and what should be the role of secondary education, and what is supposed to be the role of university education. But one of the fundamental challenges that we face, and it has got to do with the larger purpose of education in a country, and that is whether education is used just as a consumption good, that is the pursuit of knowledge, or whether education could be used as a pathway towards meeting the economic needs of a country, and which therefore it's used as a pathway towards training for the labor market. And that is where we get these challenges in the sense that our design and implementation of our education has not been able to see how the two are able to link. That is when you use the universities as the training ground, then it becomes a serious challenge. But that's what we've seen over time, that people would prefer to go to the university, not because they are going to pursue knowledge, but it's because of the economic prospects that are going to come out of going to the university. And so unless we are able to be very, very firm in terms of supporting our different levels of education to achieve the education goals, then it becomes a little bit problematic. And that is, in essence, why we will equally have a challenge with the TVET the way it's currently designed. Because if you're going to be releasing 89% of the candidature and telling that the TVET is the alternative pathway, then it means within 3 years we're going to face the same bubble. Because you realize that now maybe you have about 400,000 carpenters. Where do you absorb 400,000 carpenters? Where do you absorb 300,000 mechanics? So you realize that again we'll go back to the same challenge. So our education, which in essence, when you look at the Bloom's taxonomy, is so much focused on recall and some little bit of interpretation of knowledge towards higher ordered skills, and what Dr. Riechi and team are doing in terms of steering the curriculum reform process, so that you're able to move an education into higher ordered competences around analysis, synthesis, and not stopping at evaluation, but looking at how you can use education as a creative mechanism. So definitely this is not going to be quite easy, and considering that even the curriculum, the way it is designed, it may not necessarily even favor these students because they're already exiting the system. So they are going to join the other cohort of others who are struggling to try and find space within an economy, which is very, very unfortunate for a country such as ours.
I just thought that, to you, for the sake of our viewers, not everyone knows what TVET is. Maybe you can just describe and why it is important for candidates who score less than a C+.
Yeah, this is the technical, vocational, and education and training, which mostly it is designed around, is until the last 5 years that we've had a very well structured TVET mechanism, and including the different pathways. And now what we have is that you can still move even from a vocational training center, which previously we used to call youth polytechnics. Some people would call them village polytechnics, but now the TVET Act recognizes them as vocational training centers, and which offer in most cases what will be crafts, what people would call grade 3, grade 2, grade 1 test.
Right.
These were not necessarily very stringent around academic performance, because you could even have primary school dropouts who could still join them, because it was just about a particular craft that you are supposed to gain. But after that, you have what you call the technical training institutes. These are a little bit bigger than that. They now begin a high level of certification, which will be around certification and diplomas and such. Then now you move into what we call the polytechnics, which they are like national polytechnics, and we have quite a number of them in the country. You're talking about Eldoret, you're talking about Kisii, you're talking about Kisumu, you are talking about Meru, Kabete, National Polytechnic, quite a number of them. And now beyond that, now we have only 2 technical universities in Kenya. So these opportunities are quite available, and that's why we say that it's important. Previously, unlike how it was that it was very difficult for you to define a clear pathway until you develop to the end. The TVET Act now provides that you could progress even right from grade 3 and go all the way up to a PhD. That is the kind of advantage that they have. But however, in terms of designing them from an economic perspective, Dr. H will tell you there are fundamental challenges around it, because it is still focusing on the labor market, and which we know that in the kind of environment we live in, a degree holder earns more than a certificate holder. So people will still be trying to push for getting more papers. So unless we are able to redefine our economy to be a more productive, where there is more manufacturing, then it's a little bit challenging just to tell young people that they can gain a skill such as being a carpenter and all that. Is that what they will be doing for the rest of their lives?
Right. And Dr. Of course, the grades are important, but having been in the system for the time that you've been there, I don't know how many years, but looking at these grades and the spread, of course, we'll be told by the ministry officials that the results reflect a normal curve. A normal curve is quite important, especially when it comes to the university assessment programs. But still, there's that insistence that there's some weight that a degree holder carries or a degree certificate carries. So what do we do to the population? Because even those who score less than a C+, they still feel like they failed the examination because they're not able to transit to the university. Yet, on the other hand, we have several graduates. Like today, there are 3 universities that are graduating. Yesterday, there are several universities that graduated in the entire of this month. So we still have a lot of graduates that are still jobless. There is not so much that they can do in terms of their craft abilities. So what do we do? What do we do to reorganize our thinking and how we approach education?
I think that's a brilliant question you're asking, and I think what is happening, as I said earlier, is NEC is going around improving the validity of national examinations. And in the process, my understanding is they have not been doing, and I stand to be corrected. I wish there was, you would ask the same question to NEC officials. They have not been doing what is called moderation, right, of the results, so that they can convert those results into a normal distribution, a curve like that, so that the results would reflect the expected, distribution. But having said that, I want to...
Now, before you go away from that, what exactly is that? Because I think when the Cabinet Secretary, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, came into the Education Ministry, one of the things he said that he was fighting is that moderation of results, that reorganization of results,
absolutely,
standardization, and there was quite some noise from the unions, especially.
And I supported that because, as I mentioned to you at the beginning, what I know is NEC has sealed loopholes of manipulating the results, all right, for individual candidates, for schools which allegedly used to send some money and the results are cooked. So all those loopholes have, most of those have been sealed. I'm not saying all of them. But what is not clear, of course, I cannot answer that question about the spread of the exams, but I suspect NEC may not have, may not be doing what used to happen, a normal distribution. But to me, that's not the problem. Exactly. The problem is, do the candidates, even those who have E, the 35,000 last year, do they have some of the outcomes expected from secondary education? Because it would be unfair to say that candidates in KCSE who score E grades have failed. No, there are brilliant ideas here, including identification of individual talents and developing them. Some of those 35,536 candidates last year who scored E, you will be shocked, Sam, and my colleague Amos, that some of them have talents that were not identified, that have not been tapped, and it will be quite suicidal, or it will be unfair to condemn them. So what I'm saying is, even if this year's results do not have a big variation of those who capture, those who score C+ and above, for me, I'll not be worried. But there's something that I think needs to be understood. The importance of what Kaburu has said, TVET. I would call it vocational training. Right. I conducted a survey in Kisii County in 2013 on vocational training in the county. I was shocked. The problem number one was negative attitudes amongst learners at different levels, those who are out there, even parents, towards vocational training. Something I think, in spite of what the ministry is doing to make huge investments in vocational training, something has to be done that those out there who qualify to join vocational training centers, all right, need to be told the truth and even persuaded to join, because Kenya has an acute shortage of skilled manpower. We are talking about vocational skills. Whenever some of us who live in Nairobi want to fix plumbing issues in the village, we carry our plumbers from here. At least that's what I do. Because the one in the village where I was born, or where I live in the village, is one not as skilled as the one who is in Nairobi. And then the demand for his services are huge, so you cannot even find them. So there is need to think about what the 80% who are not going to score, who may not score C+ and above, can do, and opportunities are huge. Germany, just a minute, Germany is one of those countries. Of course, we can't compare ourselves with the level of development of, of Germany, but it's known that it's only about a third of school graduates who join directly, direct universities. Right. The rest, some join in the labor market, some go for further training in these middle-level colleges, vocational, and acquire skills that help them to be, to have jobs. Right. Yep. And you need to remember the recently launched report by the Federation of Kenyan Employers, which said that most of the graduates from Kenyan universities are not employable. Yeah. So I think
they don't have the set of skills that are desirable in the market. All right. Of course, the discussion continues as we await the Cabinet Secretary for Education, Ambassador Amina Mohamed, to release the results from the Kenya National Examinations Council offices, that is the Mitihani House along Caledonia, or rather in Caledonia Estate. We'll be getting back to that, of course, as well as the conversation that we have here in studio shortly. But first, we're taking a short break, but don't go anywhere, because as soon as the KCSE results are out, you will be getting them live. live from Citizen TV. So stay tuned.